we're being told as wealth planners to make sure that our clients can remain self-financed at least until 95. I'm like, damn it, I'm gonna have to work another 10 years to get there.
Good thing we're having fun, right?
Exactly.
Good afternoon, welcome to Northpoint of View. I'm here with Dr. Walter Kimsey. Walter.
Mark.
How are you, man?
I'm good.
All right, the last couple of podcasts, roll through your report card on Jerome Powell. Mm-hmm. I don't think he's going to graduate.
No. Back to school. Need some schooling.
2024, we talked about likely scenarios there. We beat up on the EVs pretty good in our last podcast.
Yep. Industrial policy for the U.S. A theory without a solution.
And I think the context of that one was smart things versus stupid things.
Exactly.
We just need to make a list, right? Let's do more smart things.
Yeah.
And then this one we really want to talk about beyond 2024 and beyond, right?
Right.
We'll term this Buzz Lightyear.
Yeah.
Infinity and beyond.
Exactly. Right.
What do we got?
Why don't we start with the completely recovering from COVID, just shaking off the last bits of the issues that came up with COVID.
Yeah.
Right? So we're going to have an overhang of shipping containers. I think we've got 5 million in the world, and we only really need about 4 million. So we got 1 million boxes out there, but we have a lot of people who need housing. So we could do like the Iranians do and turn them into homes.
Hey, hon, can we check Walter's medication? I think he's running low again.
They do it seriously. They have container villages.
We had to edit about 5 minutes of the last podcast. I don't know if any of you guys are going to pick up on the bombing and the terrorist stuff that we went through last time, but that's on a subscription basis only.
Exactly. No, they've got the villas built out of that. All over the world you find, even in the U.S., Sparrows Point, which is now Trade Point Atlantic, the reception office was 2 or 3 containers laid together.
Yeah, I got families in the business. That's actually really cool.
Yeah. So I'm just trying to figure out, where are we going to send these boxes to solve somebody's housing problem?
It could happen.
So, but anyways, on a more serious note, there's a lot of stuff out there. There's going to be too many container ships that need to be scrapped.
Yeah.
Containers. I don't know about the trucks. Rail cars maybe. So, I think that would end the overhang. And then, of course, consumer spending, it should really mean revert back to the trend, but we would hope that it doesn't, because we don't need more economic problems. The furniture makers, several of them have been trying to cut back desperately to stay in business. Others have filed bankruptcy and liquidation bankruptcy, not...
Yeah, we're looking for sort of a long-term integration into the trend line, right? Not a drop back down to the trend line.
Exactly. So we want that trend line to trend up fast, because that would stabilize things.
Right.
So I think at the end of 2024, we're going to feel like everything's a lot closer to being stable. And then there's the human behavior part, which I was surprised. I read an article in, I believe it was the Wall Street Journal, where they talked about colleges giving civility lessons to their students. So they would take a class on how to attend a business meeting without coming off as a weirdo or as a child. Table manners. When you go out for a business lunch, how do you behave yourself? Elbows off the table, etc. How do you address your superiors? In email, in text, or in any other way that you communicate, there are appropriate ways and inappropriate ways. And companies, I believe, were the ones asking the universities to do a little bit more to prepare the students. But what that tells us is we've got some small generation of people who were far more impaired by COVID than just maybe getting sick.
Yeah.
So I think by the time we're into 2024's and early 2025, I think we'll have enough people who know the norms and how to behave that it'll move on.
It reminds me of after the '08 crash, which for us in the real estate business, deeply embedded. It lasted 4+ years. I mean,
Yeah.
it was 12, maybe even 13. But by the time you hit 16, 17, it was time to stop talking about the impact of the recession. I mean, move on, right?
That's true.
And so I'm not trying to belittle the situation, but at some point, you're looking forward, not looking in the rearview mirror.
That's right.
And I just wonder, with the trend line, with all the the societal issues, health issues, economic issues. It is interesting to look out maybe another year and think that maybe some more of the remnants of that have swept away. And of course, the focus second half of next year is going to be the election, right?
Yeah, exactly.
As painful as that's going to be. Oh my gosh.
It's so ugly.
Not looking forward to it.
We have the media doesn't make money from bad news. They make money from hate. I mean, I watch all the channels for all the political spectrum. I find the news coverage in the U.S. still too domestic focused. There's, to get global, you got to go on YouTube and watch the European channels, or even surprisingly the Brazilian channels, because they're more international focused.
Yeah.
But
I think we've gotten numb to anything that's just sort of, bad news, and it is sensationalism, and I think people are just unplugging. At least I know I am.
Well, I hope so, because the hate that they are generating is unbelievable. I just watch it sometimes just to see what the tone is. And oh my gosh, both the left and the right, they're out there trying to create, extremists with the lies that they promote. I'm stunned. I mean, I think our media today is the worst it's ever been, because on top of that, we also have exaggeration of things like the technology. It's over promoted, and people talk about it like it's the year 2040, but sorry, it's 2023. We got a ways to go. 2040 is a benchmark year for me.
You turn 50 in 2020 in 2040?
No. It's Ray Kurzweil says that's when we'll have real artificial intelligence, not this nonsense we got right now, where the machines invent themselves, the machines repair themselves, the machines find new things for them to do. And
I'll tell you how AI is impacting my life right now. My Spotify account is now, I've got an AI DJ. And so yesterday he's playing my list, my top 10 from my 2017 playlist. So it's not driving my car right now. It's just giving me some good music to listen to as I'm driving down the road.
Oh man,
that's the functional limitation.
But you see, other things that we're running into is the automation stuff is important. The AI is important because we have very low population growth, and
right.
You've heard me before. I advocate for opening the borders, bring them in, sort them out, get rid of the ones that are really not a good idea. But there's some terrific talent and a trainable human capital sitting right on our borders. Everybody looks at them as criminals and crooks, and I think you do the country a horrible disservice when you mislabel that.
We've got to have a meaningful immigration plan.
Exactly. It doesn't mean that I want to open the borders and let everybody in. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we've got gold banging on our door, and we're like, go away. Okay, so there's some dirt with the gold. Okay. But I think we will see if that happens, there will be an acceleration of the change of the composition of the U.S. population.
Well, and then you and I touched on it the last podcast. We didn't drill down into it, but the sheer numbers of the economic investment manufacturing sector in this country, I mean, has grown 250, 300% in the last 2 or 3 years.
Yeah.
And we're talking staggering numbers. And there's got to be an ROI on that, right?
Yep.
I mean, if you're Hyundai, if you're Samsung, I mean, you go through the list, there's ROI on that. And the only way to justify that is having the workforce.
Yeah.
Right? To make those factories, competitive.
It's interesting you say that. I was reading an interview with Intel. This was in Supply Chain Brain, I think it was. It's one of my favorite reading spots. And they were talking about the big chip factory that they're building in Columbus. And it won't be ready for 3 years, 4 years, something like that. But they've already started building the labor force.
Right.
And they said they've done this before, they've built plants in places, and the day you say the shovel hits the dirt is the day you start hiring people to work in the thing that doesn't even exist yet.
Right.
Because you've got to train them. And the workforce as we go through this decade is, your blue collar guy is going to look a lot more like an IT nerd.
Yep.
Okay. But
stay in school, kids.
But where we live here, I mean, one of the implications for the Savannah area is we're going to need fewer and fewer of the sorters and the stackers and the forklift drivers, but we're going to need more of the plumbers and the electricians and the computer guys. And so it's important that we start moving our labor force to be trained that way, because those are the jobs that are going to be in demand.
Absolutely. Yeah, and stay in school doesn't necessarily mean a 4-year degree. It's a practical education on hands-on labor.
Exactly. Well, they're going to bring those training programs into the schools is the point.
Yes.
At which, when you say stay in school, right. The only thing we're going to have to worry about a little bit is the people who test the students to see what they should do. Albert Einstein, when he, in Europe, you get tested twice. For your aptitude, and when he was in 7th grade, or the equivalent, in Switzerland, they decided that he should go be a mechanic, that he had no aptitude for college. But then when they tested him a few years later, because they give you a second chance, it's like, oh my goodness, put him in the college group, okay? This guy does not belong here. And we're going to have issues like that in this country. I mean, we have a problem with the way we label people.
Yes.
And we underpay the people who need to get it right. So what we get are a bunch of people who aren't really very skilled or the best of the best making decisions that impact somebody at age 14 out to the end of their life, which, by the way, by the end of this decade, the life expectancy is probably going to be well north of 100.
Yes.
It's a finance community is just blowing up over that. I was doing some retirement planning, and the guy that I talked to said, I told him, I said, I don't know, about, 80, 85 is probably it, and he's like, dude, we're being told as wealth planners to make sure that our clients can remain self-financed at least until 95. I'm like, damn it, I'm gonna have to work another 10 years to get there.
Good thing we're having fun, right?
Exactly. We like what we do. So, but anyways, that's that whole demographic angle to me is just, how we relate to people, how they get educated, the jobs they get, and then, how we have to teach them to save a hell of a lot more money. It's...
What is the, some of the things that we're talking about, long-term, structurally, I mean, how do we integrate that into our overall thought processes? Or is it just something that just organically grows through the system, through conversations like this?
Well, it's a really good point, Mark. You and I talked about this a few years ago in one of the videos about the slowing population growth rate. And I was lucky. During most of my career, the population growth rate for the US was 1 to 2%. It was 2%, and it dropped towards 1.4 or 1%. But that was enough to sustain GDP growth of 2 to 3.5%. And so I could do a lot of good calculations based off of demographic growth.
Right.
And I made some simple assumptions about productivity growth. Well, you look at Japan, they have positive GDP growth, but they have negative population growth, negative workforce growth. They're still shrinking. And so Japan is what I've been looking at the most, and all the adaptation that they've had to do, and the resistance that had to be overcome. So a simple example is in Japan, they don't have enough medical people. We don't either. But you go online in Japan and you say, I'm sick. And then the AI comes in. This is 10 years ago. This is not just recent. It's not this AI bullshit, whatever, from, that we're talking about these few years. This goes back then because doctors are viewed as encyclopedias. You list the symptoms. These symptoms are consistent with these diseases. Then you ask a few more questions to narrow it down. And these last two diseases get the same medical treatment. So then you prescribe some medicine, and then it's reviewed by a nurse. And if the nurse isn't sure, they check with the doctor. But basically, the nurse clicks the box, and prescription sent to the pharmacy. And then the pharmacy has somebody prepare it and then deliver it to your house. Okay, that's where we need to go. But in our country, the medical guys, we can't have emails with the clients, we can't have portals with, they've been fighting that for years. But one thing COVID did is it broke open a lot of those doors. And the more competitive medical things in the country are going to be those that imitate what Japan does. And they're going to take market share like you wouldn't believe, because we are going in Japan's direction. Baby boomers are the fastest growing segment of the US population. So we did a lot on people.
I think as we look at this time of year, December, January, there's a lot of optimism. You gave me a stat earlier today on where the U.S. is coming out in terms of ranking world GDP,
stock market, unemployment, etc. 5 variables.
And we certainly have a lot to be thankful for. I think you and I share this, that sort of puts a lot of responsibility on us to be, good planners and use knowledge, but more importantly, wisdom, as we talk about the future.
Exactly, and pass it on to our kids and our grandkids if we can.
Yeah,
it's a lot.
Hey, with that, Walter, Merry Christmas, man. Happy holidays. Happy New Year.
Merry Christmas, Mark, and to you and your family.
Yeah, thanks, man.
Take care, everybody.